Hi everyone, my name is Ibreez Ajaz and I work as a doctor in the NHS, and I want to thank you all for joining me on another episode of our InFocus series where we make small snippet videos so you can get the exact information you need to know in a small amount of time. Today's topic is going to be on post-graduation in the United Kingdom. A lot of times when we think about post-graduation, we aren't really sure what it means, but we're going to break it down into two things. One, there is the academic post-graduation you get when you get an academic degree, and the second one is a clinical post-graduation that you get when you get clinical training. In most countries, when we think about getting postgraduate training, we think if we get an MS, an MD, an MSc, or PhD, that's all we'll need in order to then progress into our training and then become a consultant or an attending, or basically get to the end of our medical training. But it's not like that exactly in the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, if you want to enter into training, there'll be two types of training that you'll be most likely looking into. It can be uncoupled training or coupled training, and this depends upon the type of training that you eventually want to join into. So now let's talk about postgraduate degrees in the sense of an academic degree. So academic degrees can be things like MDs, MS, MScs, or PhDs. You can do these degrees back home, you can do them in the UK, you can do them as distant learning, you can do them full-time, or you can do them part-time. But what I want to make abundantly clear is they are not necessary in order to enter into clinical training or to further progress your career as a doctor in the United Kingdom. It is simply up to you whether you want to expand your educational horizon and do an academic degree. But like I said before, I want to make it really clear, you do not have to get an academic degree to get into specialty training or to further your career in the United Kingdom. I know that in a lot of countries, if you do an MS or an MD or any of those degrees, that's how you progress into training, but it's not like that in the UK. Now let's talk about the postgraduate training in the aspects of clinical training. This is basically the end result of what you want when you're working in the UK. You want to enter into training, you want to become a consultant. So keeping that in mind, let's talk a little bit about what it means to enter into this training. Depending on what kind of specialty training or what kind of doctor you want to be, what kind of specialty you want to end up in, there'll be two types that you'll have to basically keep in mind. Your training may be uncoupled or it may be run through. Uncoupled training basically means that you will have to do a core training before you enter into the main specialty training. So you'll have to basically apply twice to get into these things. For instance, what was core medical training is now internal medical training, but that is an uncoupled thing. You do 3 years or 2 to 3 years of the IMT, and then you apply for specialty training for whichever speciality you wish to enter into. They also have that for core surgical training. But to give examples about what run-through training is, for example, for obs and gynae, they start at ST1, same with pediatrics. That doesn't mean you can't enter at an ST3 or ST4 level if you come with more experience from back home and then wish to enter and don't want to start at the bottom. But obviously there are going to be more posts that'll be available at an ST1 level rather than at an ST or ST4 level. So it's very important you look at the person specifications before you apply into training. If you meet the person specifications, there is a nationally advertised training that is released throughout, in a certain time of the year. And you can see how we've described it, how to apply, and the ratios involved with different specialities in our post on specialty training opportunities in the UK. With it, you can then kind of make a plan in your mind that, all right, this is where I am, this is the stage I'm at in my career, and in the long term, I want to be here. So you can kind of get an idea of how you want to train and apply. For instance, for me, I knew I couldn't apply for IMT, right out of the bat because I didn't meet the person specifications of having the 1 year postgraduate after internship. So I made sure to line up when I started so that by the time I could be starting IMT, I met that person's specifications. You should look at other things too when you want to apply, whether or not you've made use of all the other training opportunities or ALS or any of those things have been completed, because if you've not done that, you don't want to wait until the 11th hour to do that. It does not matter where you get into training because all the training is nationally accredited and they are kept at the same standard. It's up to you to choose into your location if you have any specifications. You want to be in a certain place or you don't want to be in another place, if you've got family in one place or another. But like I said in our post, we discuss how to do the ranking. So make sure you rank appropriately and make sure that you are willing to start when you do start. It's not necessary for you to have NHS experience before you start if you meet the other person's specifications. I just would recommend you do, because it's not a good idea to start a training program without knowing how the system works. If you wonder whether or not you should do non-training for some time, the reason I really do mention that people should do it is to get an idea of how everything is set up once you start working in the United Kingdom. Non-training and training posts aren't radically different when it comes to your job and what you have to do on the day-to-day, but you have to keep in mind that when you're into a training post, you have a lot of things that you need to keep on top of. There's going to be a curriculum that you need to maintain, and there's going to be people that you have to report to and tell them, this is how I'm making sure I'm doing what I need to do to get into the training and to complete all aspects of this training. Another point that a lot of people seem to have confusion about is whether or not they'll get paid when they do training in the UK. So again, I want to kind of go back to where I was talking about academic and clinical training. When you do academic degrees, you're going to have to pay the university to take this degree. If you find a scholarship, that's fantastic. But overall, when you think about an academic degree, you are paying to get this degree. Clinical training, on the other hand, you have a job, so you will be paid to work as a doctor. You will not have to pay them. I'm not talking about, some people argue that, okay, well, I have to pay for my visa, I have to do relocation. That doesn't really come under that umbrella. I'm talking about the day-to-day, the training that you're receiving as a doctor to go towards a certain speciality, you will be paid. Now, taking into consideration the pay, you will be at a CT1 or an ST1 level depending on which speciality you enter. And accordingly, there's a set scale throughout the country of how much doctors at this level get paid, and then this scale is adjusted as you progress throughout your training at different levels, and these levels differ for different specialities, so I won't go into that. But again, we do have a post about pay in the UK that in depth describes at different levels what pay you can expect. Now the question is to be asked, should I do an academic degree? All right, if you know the speciality that you're eventually going to enter into is a pretty competitive speciality and you want to maybe bolster your application and give yourself that extra push ahead of everyone else, do an academic degree. If you're thinking, well, I can't see why it would be super helpful for my application, but I kind of want to know more about the subject and you want to do it, by all means do it. Don't feel obligated to do it. On your application for either core or specialty training, there is a section where you will get extra points if you do have an academic degree. But like I said, it's wholly and solely dependent on whether or not you want to do it. I got into IMT without an academic degree, and I know a lot of other people who've done it too. I also know a lot of people who got into IMT with an academic degree. It's just what you can present. My application, I got extra points in my, I did audits and QIPs, and I did some teachings, and that's how I made sure that my application was well-rounded. If you feel that you don't think you'll have a lot of audits or anything done, and you think it's more feasible for you to do an academic degree, go ahead and do it. People ask me, well, should I do an academic degree and then do PLAB or then do any specialty training exams and then get GMC registration? It's up to you. I wouldn't recommend it, mainly because the type of visa you get on an academic degree you can work on, but it's not as a doctor, and you may not feel comfortable doing those type of jobs after you've been working as a doctor for a long period of time. If you, however, you come on a Tier 2 visa and you already are working as a doctor and then you decided to get a degree, you'll get a doctor's pay and you can do a part-time or distant learning academic degree. And even if it takes you 2, 3, 4 years, maybe longer than anyone else, if you're looking at the long-term specialty training, if you're already showing that you have that commitment towards a speciality, it just looks good for you overall. Even if you don't complete it at the exact time you want to complete it, it's not about having the most thing in your application. It's about having a well-rounded application where you know what you want to do and you can present it to them in the interview that this is my long-term plan. A lot of times I see people thinking, if I can just get my hands on all of these things and put it in one basket and present it to them in my application or in my interview process, that they'll hand me that training post. But really, it's not about having the most. There are people I know who have a very, I won't say meager application, but they have a very thin application versus other people, but their application makes sense. They've not just done a bunch of random, publications or research projects or audits or degrees. Whatever they've done, it's been a straight line towards whatever they want to do. So if there's one thing to take away from all of this, is to make sure that you know what you want to do when you start doing it. Something that a lot of people want to know then, by the time they finish their specialty training, what degree do they get? So So you aren't given a placard or degree per se. Essentially what you can expect is when you're in your specialty training, there are certain specialty exams that you have to complete. For instance, if you do medicine, you'll have to take the MRCP, or if you do obs and gynae, you take the MRCOG. So after that, you get those postgraduate degrees from those exams, and that's happening while you're in the training process. At the very end of your specialty training, you'll get something known as a CCT, or a Certificate of Completion of Training. This is basically your ticket to go to GMC and be like, hey, I've done all this training, I've got these degrees in my hand, this MRCP or what have you, and I now want to be on the specialist register. You'll see if you check on anyone's GMC LRMP whether or not they're on the specialist register, and that's essentially what's being told to you, that this individual has completed their training, they've gotten their CCT, and they've taken the CCT to GMC, and GMC has said, yes, you can be on the specialist register. Now, whether or not this CCT will be accepted for you back home is dependent on your home country. Some countries will take it, some countries don't. Whether or not it is accepted is something that you need to find out from your country's medical regulatory board. So basically, the end of the line is, with this CCT, you can work as a consultant in the United Kingdom, which is probably what all of you all are wanting to do in the long run anyway. Thank you again for joining me on another episode of our InFocus series. I really hope I answered any questions or concerns that you may have had. But if you still have any confusion, don't hesitate to comment below. And while you're commenting below, perhaps if you can tell where we are right now, that would be something interesting to see if anyone can figure out exactly where we've shot this video today. But until next time, don't forget you can follow us on Instagram, subscribe to us on YouTube, and like us on Facebook. Thanks.